All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started right at 11 here. Really appreciate your time today as we're going through the Virtual Open Houses 101 for community colleges. I am Matt Pagano. I'm an account manager here with Net Natives. If you've heard of us or not heard of us, we are a digital marketing group that partners with higher education clients really around the world. Obviously here based within the US. These virtual open houses are a huge thing that are going on right now, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. There's obviously a lot of things within the US. Some states may have it differently, where people might have a chance to be there in person, but across the board, we're seeing a lot of different things with community colleges and what can you do to engage your, potential students through, online, through a Zoom, something similar to this. So we're going to go over different ways that you can really go about the process. Hopefully you take some really good points from this and can plug it into virtual open houses you have coming up, as this is really the time that we would see open houses, in person over the years. So obviously we're working through a bit of a challenge here, but excited to discuss this with you today. So what we do here with Net Natives, we're a student marketing group. Really our mindset is looking at how we can help education institutions to find and build and activate their communities, looking at things like telling stories, taking risks, breaking new ground. Virtual open houses are really all of that right now. It's completely new. We're just about a year pretty much into where we first went into the COVID-19 pandemic. And 13 months ago, I would never think a virtual open house would be something that we would be doing and talking through, but here we are. And it's a great possibility again for you to connect to your students. It still allows you to do more things with it. And again, having potential students, parents, things like that join from the comfort of their homes, it obviously makes them, it makes it a little bit easier for their sense of time. But again, there's a lot of differences between in-person and obviously virtual. When we look at the agenda for today, going to go through just a quick introduction. Next, embracing innovation and strategy, which is crucial to this process. And then looking at data capture, lead nurture, which again is ultimately going to be how do we take these people that have signed up for the virtual open house or prospective students in general, and how do we convert them into an application and most importantly into an enrollment. And then finally, we'll recap with some key takeaways at the end of the webinar. So starting off here is an introduction. We've done something called the Student Media Insight Survey, where we've surveyed students all around the country and asking them various different questions. But obviously a big focus was always open house. We can really appreciate that this was a source for a lot of potential students to see your campus, interact with the admissions team, interact with their students' professors. And now you're at a bind where it's a very different process. With this survey, we found 94% of students say that events like an open house are important factors when deciding which school to attend. Then we look at, 60% of students that actually attend an open house are more likely to convert and consider. So obviously we're taking a much different approach here, whether you're running virtual open houses on any platform that you have, different ways that we can connect with these individuals so that these statistics can stay relatively the same. These are extremely important, especially within community colleges. Sometime a potential student really hasn't had a chance to see kind of the places, the buildings, the classrooms that you have on a campus here. So I'm going to go over the ways, obviously, that we can benefit from the times that we're in now. So the first thing that we wanted to go through was just kind of how you can evoke a connection with your virtual open house. As we've mentioned, open houses are really all about students coming to your campus and feeling some sort of connection, and then sharing that feeling to whether it's their friends, family. It's an emotional, interaction that they have there. Especially for community colleges, there's a lot of different student types that you can have at your school, which can make things a bit more of a challenge than maybe a standard four-year university that's looking for a younger student audience. You're looking for a younger audience, but then you also have a high percentage of students that are coming from non-traditional background, maybe getting a certification, trying to change fields. So it's really all about creating that unique experience at your open house, which will leave your prospective students with a story to tell. After they leave that virtual open house, they're telling people that they know, this is what we did here. I really enjoyed it. We got to do this sort of thing. I learned this. Something that they're feeling afterwards, that emotion, where it allows them to provide and look into more about your school, and ultimately, like I mentioned, lead to hopefully that enrollment. So when we look here, the number one thing that we always recommend is embracing innovation. This is obviously across the board. There's so many different things that are going on a digital basis right now, as COVID has kind of changed that in-person over to the digital side of things. But it's looking at, again, when you go to an open house, students can see the buildings inside of the lecture halls. If you have dorms on campus, some community colleges do, some don't, they can check that out. They get to interact with students that they'll be learning with on a day-to-day basis. It's a very important thing. And that's the number one thing we recommend for a virtual open house. It should not be a passive experience. We want to encourage you should be encouraging your prospective students to get involved, creating your own contact and interacting with one another. Again, you can see there's so many different things that we have here with different audiences. You can see we have a stat, 71% of students use Snapchat on a daily basis. More traditional audience, which again is a subset for a community college, but then you're looking at that non-traditional. So there's a lot of different ways that you can embrace innovation, and we're going to talk about a few of those right now. The first is looking at utilizing your students into ambassadors. So this is more so looking at the Gen Z side of things, and again, could be older students that are also active on social media. But it's really looking at the way that you can use them within your virtual open house, and they can carry a strong message to those prospective students. In our student media insight survey that I mentioned before, almost half of this generation has made a second person word of mouth recommendation for a service or product based on a positive experience of a friend or relative. And then 30% have even repeated praise they overheard from someone they didn't know. So it's really interesting. I do it myself. I'm sure a lot of us all do the same thing. We hear things from different people that we trust, or someone that we think may have a good idea of what's going on there. So that's ultimately that connection that we want to bring through this virtual open house. Again, it's a potential student that comes and they tell their friends about what type of things that were covered during it, the questions that were answered, the possibilities that are there. So there's a lot of different things, but ultimately it's looking at your students as a way to connect with these potential students. They're enrolled there right now. They're taking classes, virtual classes or in person. There's many different ways that they can interact with them, maybe showcasing a day-to-day that they have going on. If your school is still doing virtual learning, showcase within social media platforms a student from start to finish of their day. How is a class going? Maybe a brief, snippet of what they're hearing, what the professors are going through. Because a lot of people that have not done virtual learning, say for a non-traditional student, for example, they're not going to be used to this experience at all. But if you can have someone that's showcasing to them what they're doing, what their day-to-day is looking like, how they can pay attention in class and still learn what they're looking to really learn and get a degree in, that's going to be extremely influential. But really we want to look at how we're going to do this. So we've kind of combined it into 4 different things. First is research and identify your students and your student groups. Next, create valuable content and memorable experiences. In the bottom left, think about parents, which is extremely important. And then finally, show your difference through your values. So we're actually going to touch on each of them individually over the next couple slides here. So the first one, as I mentioned, how do we put these 4 elements into practice? Here's the strategy. So first, look at research and identify your students. So again, data is ultimately always going to be, at the highest priority here. You want a way that you can collect, sign up forms, give the insights to help identify your students, groups, and shared social interests. We've seen a lot of examples of virtual open houses and what they're doing, but a lot of schools are looking into different ways that they can appeal to a social interest. It's not something you want to look at where you have an overall virtual open house where it's just, again, bits and pieces covered, allowing people to join different rooms for what they want to do. When a student goes to college, they're looking at what courses do they want to study, what can they do around the campus to be involved, to maybe meet friends, whether it's through athletics, social clubs, things like that. So there's a lot of different things, and it's very important for you to identify the different types of people and the different options they can have when going to a virtual open house. And to mention, it's all about providing that segmentation so that you have like-minded attendees. When you go to a college, and I was in the same boat here, change is a tough thing, and especially when you're learning and going through that environment, you want to be with people that are similar to you. And it's tough within community colleges because you will have classrooms that have older students, have younger students right outside of high school, and sometimes that connection for them is tough. But here within virtual open houses, it allows us to build that like-minded attendees where they can, potentially, if you have a virtual open house for, a non-traditional student looking to come back for a certification, and then having another option for someone coming right from high school, they're going to relate more to what's covered on each of those different segments. Next, when we go here, it's creating valuable content and memorable experiences. So we talked about getting, potential students that you have involved, but getting your alumni involved is really crucial because obviously they know better than anyone what it's like to be a student at your institution. But it's a little bit different this year, obviously, because your alumni maybe have never gone through a virtual learning experience. You may have some recent graduates last year that went through that, so they can talk more. So on that, talk about what they went through on a day-to-day, the ups, maybe some of the struggles that they found as well. It's just really great for people to connect with someone that went through the process. Community colleges offer such great programs and within different trades that you wouldn't see technically at a four-year university. So a lot of these people just really want to know, what type of learning am I going to have? What's my experience like during classes? What's it going to be like after as well? Once I got this certification or this associate's degree, what did you find was your next step? Were you able to succeed? What was, a starting salary, stuff like that. Everyone really wants to feel that connection. And again, it's working with your most creative students to take charge of a vlogging cameras, something that's really innovative. And again, maybe it's in campus if you're in a state right now where things are a bit more open and students are there and walking around, or through a virtual learning environment. I touched on it earlier, but for someone that hasn't been in that process, they don't know what it's like, they don't know what to expect. Have someone, again, take the time, whether it's 30 seconds to a minute, to record the classes that they're going through, what their professors are saying, what type of assignments that they have. This is ultimately what people want to hear. And it's going to provide a great piece of content so that people are going to want to join your virtual open house because they see, all right, I'm going to interact with this person. That would be my specific day-to-day next year or next semester when I enroll. But really utilizing this user-generated content, it creates unique, genuine, and authentic pieces that people can interact with. And they'll come to love and appreciate about your community college. Authenticity is something that people love. They don't want the standard, just giving out information. Here's our classes, here's the enrollment dates. They want to be able to interact with people, have their questions that they have lined up, but providing different ways that they can be talking throughout a virtual open house, getting this prospective student to be more comfortable, learning more about the school, making friends through this. It's an engaging experience that we have coming up here. Then looking, we're touched on this a lot, but it's letting your students tell their story works. We've done this within the Student Media Insights that hosting an employee or influencer on your Instagram story for a few days has been shown to boost engagement by nearly 20%. So again, this is crucial. If you have an influencer with a student who has followers and they do have within Instagram, things like that, people are reaching out. They want to know what these people are doing. So again, these are different ways that we can look into that. But again, taking over for a few days, because a lot of times with community colleges, we'll see that they're doing email drip campaigns, sign up, register for this event. And then it's just sent via email on a day-to-day basis. And for a traditional younger student, they're not checking their email as much. But on Instagram, they may be following you. And this is something where if a student talks about this virtual open house, what they're doing, what their dorm life is like, what their classes are. It's going to have a great effect on moving forward. Next, we look at thinking about parents. So again, you're trying to target the student audience, but they are influenced by their parents, peers, and friends. So you want to get them kind of on the same team here. Now, parents kind of over the years, they may have less of kind of that main decision, but most of the time they can be responsible financially. They're going to want to have those financial aid questions, things like that. That's really important to them as they look at their child's education. So the questions you want to ask are, how will they want to know about your institution? How can you reassure them about the current changes to exams and modes of learning? I think this is extremely crucial for parents. I know my parents would be the same way, especially for virtual learning. The school that the classes that I'm paying for, the credits that my child is taking, are they actually going to learn through this pandemic while they learn remotely or virtually? That's really important for them because they're not familiar with it. They did not go through that process. So it's tough for them to understand. So use that to explain to them what they can expect to see from their child. Next is looking at ways we can direct them to a dedicated landing page, which answers these worries. And again, this is from your marketing opportunities as well. Sometimes parents may want to do more in-depth research on certain things that are going on. Again, they want to see more specifics that they can send to their child to say, hey, this is what we can expect. And this is what we want you to be, 2 years down the road if you have your associate's degree. And then finally, it's who's best to tell the story of an institution in a way parents will engage with. So there's a lot of different options here. Again, this is another way of getting in touch with your alumni. If you have even a student ambassador right now that you work with, a lot of community colleges utilize student ambassadors. Ask them if their parents would feel comfortable joining your virtual open house, because they may offer great insight to someone that is, again, first child going to school, whatever that may look like. But they're going to relate so much to maybe a student ambassador's parent and answer some great questions that they've seen just kind of from the virtual learning experience. And then finally, kind of the strategy is show differences through your values. Something I love about community colleges, and I'm proud to have gone to a community college myself and taken classes throughout it. Community colleges can be the backbone of a smaller type of town, city, whatever that may be. Ultimately, sometimes big universities, 4 universities, don't have that connection to the people that are from their town. And it's extremely important for you to really showcase, what you're doing, how you're connecting, especially within COVID-19. A lot of community colleges are centers for vaccinations because they have the space there. They have the ability to support that. Showcase the things that you're doing for your community to really see that, hey, we care a lot about you. Even if you're enrolling or not enrolling, we're doing the things to make sense for really, everything going forward. We want to make this a stronger type of community. And we really want you to do that from applying, coming here to showcase that, hey, these are the values that you're going to get within our school. So we think that's really important. Showcase what you're doing in the community. Now more than ever is the time where people want to see the positive things that are going on. We're looking for that like ray of light right now, and it's almost there. We're getting there, but showcase what you're doing to really achieve that, making your campus a safe place so that a student can learn and learn safely. And then we look at, how you get a prospective students to attend pre, during, and post event. So obviously this is the biggest thing. If you're marketing or admissions team, you're looking at numbers specifically. A lot of times it's how many signups do we have? How many people actually came? Okay, if we look 2-3 months down the road, how many of those signups actually applied? How many of them enrolled? So it's a lot about numbers, but different things that we can look at. First, pre-event, it's time to get the word out with advertising. There's obviously so many different platforms within digital advertising that are out there currently at the moment. So you want to look at the different ways. And, for our side of things, it's tough to recommend specific platforms because each school is completely different. You're going to have, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, your target market that you want. Some schools may be looking at, again, non-traditional versus traditional, what's going to happen. So again, this is where with us at Net Natives, we do provide free digital consulting within this process. So you're always more than welcome to interact with us to go about this, because it's important to make sure that we've mentioned a few things. Your right segments are there. Your audience can interact with the ads that make sense for them. So this is an interesting one pre-event. Again, it's tough to make specific recommendations that can work across the board because every school is different. So it's really going through that process and working with people that have gone through this that can provide advertising help or just discussion to just see how people can interact. But we always recommend involving your current students. They made the choice to go to your school. Make sure that you ask them to see what they think was helpful when they were applying, because they're ultimately going to be the best person to speak to. Next, it's looking at maximizing your tech and keep attendees engaged. So within this, community colleges sometimes can be very limited on a team basis. You may have smaller marketing teams, you may have smaller admission teams, but it's looking at, again, if you have the tech set up, but if not, what are you doing to keep these attendees engaged? Obviously, drip campaigns are always going to be a consistent follow-up that are automated and personalized. So you can have more time to, essentially reach out or, connect with someone. But we've mentioned some things along here, but, integrate your communications and touch points throughout the day so that attendees don't miss out on headline sessions, such as like a VIP alumni workshop, which is really great. Or say it's a social club that's very big throughout campus. So make sure that there's different ways that people can join different rooms that you can set up all kind of running simultaneously. Like I said, people want to be with like attendees. They want to make sure that where they're at is the relevant information for them moving forward. And then reminders via your meeting tech and on social media of what's coming up will maximize your attendees. Really for virtual events, it is a challenge because when people sign up, in their back of their mind, it's not something they have to physically go to. It's just a click of a mouse and they're there. So sometimes they probably will be less likely to show. So it's making sure that through your social media, it's a constant daily reminder, don't miss out on what's coming up here. Making sure that you have messages going out. If you have, phone numbers for a younger student, sending out automated text messages to them is going to resonate well because that's how they communicate most of the time. So in an older audience, that may be through email, it may be through phone follow-ups, whatever works best and what your team has time for. So, these are just ways that you can set up. And again, it's really having this all planned out before that we think is the most beneficial. And then post-event, this is really where, that plan beforehand is going to be taking that student from that first touch point into enrollment. That's ultimately what our main goal with all of our partners is. How can we take that, virtual open house, just a sign up and move that to someone that's taking a class next semester? So, it's engaging with your potential students immediately after. You have two distinct sets of data, those who attended, those who registered but did not attend. Make sure that you separate them and thank those that did attend. We've got some schools here that have been sending out some interactive surveys as well right after the call, which they've been getting some great feedback. They're asking, what could have we done better? What did you enjoy most about the experience? It's, great ways that they can interact with them. And for those who registered but did not attend, make sure you keep them separate and let them know, hey, we have other opportunities coming up here. If you're in a state where things are starting to open up, and you can have some, open houses or some things on campus, let them know about an event that may be coming up that they can look out for. But ultimately, it's getting that information with them, and then you need to know, what do I want my attendees to do next? So it's specifically, you want to get them more talking about the programs that they're involved in. Maybe they're having conversations with recruitment directors. Have your staff reaching out to them directly through phone calls, potentially can build that relationship, especially if they attended and it's someone that was an alumni or a current student, that student ambassador. Have them reach out to them and connect with them. They're going to have more of a higher conversation with them about what's interest, what questions I have, etc. So that post event obviously is going to be a huge piece of this virtual open house. And there's many different ways, obviously, that we can provide this follow-up, but it's working with best. And again, working with your students, your attendees on what they think will feel, is the best next steps. And like I said, the schools that have done surveys, they've seen some great results, allow people to get interactive and connect with them. Then we're just going to look at the key takeaways here. The first is create an interactive experience that isn't passive or impersonal. Again, allowing someone to join and giving them a platform where if they'd like to be engaged, that they can. Obviously, someone could be uncomfortable if they just want to listen, but it's ways that they can engage if they'd like to. Empower your existing students to be your very own ambassadors. Personalize content to the key influencers too. Again, they're going to have a huge appeal to a traditional audience. And if it's someone that they may have interacted with or known, because in community college, people are coming from the same towns. Word of mouth travels very fast. They're familiar with a lot of your current students. So utilize them. Connect with prospective students through your shared values. As we discuss, advertise your event on the platforms students are already residing on, maximizing your tech to keep your attendees engaged throughout the day. And then finally, have your next steps already in mind for straight after your event. Make sure that with your virtual open house, you have set up weeks, months before what you're going to do next. Definitely don't wait until how many people show up or to see how everyone engage, to see how you want to follow up with them. So this is really what we wanted to cover through today. Again, there's a lot of different factors that go into community colleges, and everyone is completely different. And we really appreciate you joining with us today. If you would like to discuss these advertising opportunities or just get a sense of things that we're seeing out there, what we would recommend, because we do work with a lot of community college partners that are in similar situations with you and are limited based upon the state that they're in. So please reach out to us here. We have our email set up here. If you're on Zoom on the chat function, we've also included a couple links as well. One is a white paper where you can get some information, a wealth of information from what we covered today. So feel free to download that, take a look. Again, our contact information is listed here. We really appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining. Looking forward to hopefully having another webinar soon. If you'd like to see any other topics discussed exclusively for community college, please let us know. We want to help in as many ways as we can. So appreciate everyone. Have a great rest of the day, and we will talk soon. Thank you.